Okay, good morning. The plan for today is to start to look at and understand the homicide statutes that we have in Wyoming. And we're going to try and connect this to something you've probably seen in the news but may not have taken the time to read about. So, the first place we're going to go is to our statutes tile, Title 6, Crimes and Offenses, and then Chapter 2, Offenses Against the Person. Again, this is all a lot easier if you expand these little plus and minus boxes. So, Article 1 is homicide, and you'll notice the first one here is first degree murder, gives us a definition, and tells us the punishment. And then there's going to be a bunch of stuff here uh, about the requirements for the death sentence, and we're not going to get into that today, but all of this is about process of deciding whether or not the penalty is going to be the death penalty and how that works. But if you go down to Statute 104, then we have second degree murder, definition and punishment, manslaughter, homicide by vehicle, criminally negligent homicide, drug-induced homicide. And then an interesting one, it's not a crime, it's just a sentencing enhancement. But if someone's convicted of one of the lesser forms of homicide and they knew that the victim was pregnant, they get some sentence enhancements that are mandatory. So, depending on how you count, there are 7 different types of homicide in Wyoming. So there's not just murder. And you'll be surprised at what some of the penalties are. So, we're going to do the first one together. We need to figure what the heck constitutes first degree murder. So, we go on our drive, start a new document. I'm going to call it classifying homicide. You can call it anything you want because it's just going to be for you. So we're going to basically just set out different types of homicide, and then in our own words, and you might want to snap these windows together if that makes it easier. So once you have those snapped, what we need to figure out is what keywords are we looking for here that make first degree murder unique as far as homicides go, and then what are some of the words they use that we may be unfamiliar with. So keywords here, whoever purposely and with premeditated malice is the first definition that we have to figure out what the heck it means. So purposely and with premeditated malice. Now, since we're doing this one together, how I would restate this or define this, I would say basically someone who consciously chooses to and does so with some pre-planning and has made up their mind before the act actually takes place. And then malice meaning with cruel intentions, like with the intent to cause harm or inflict pain on someone. So basically, if they're committing a homicide on purpose and they've pre-planned it out and organized stuff, it's not just they snapped and in the heat of the moment they killed somebody, and they also do it with the intent to cause harm or hurt, then that would constitute first degree murder. Now, when you see the word or, that means, well, if it fits that, it's going to be first degree murder. If it doesn't, it could fit any of these other ones. So if somebody was attempting to or carrying out any of these other crimes, so like let's say arson, if they were burning down a building on purpose, which would be arson, and somebody was inside, that would be first degree murder if they died. Escape, so like let's say they're already in the county jail and they try and escape, and they kill somebody as they're trying to escape from jail, that would be first degree murder. So that one's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing is that there's 3 sentences here. So if, let's say I define that, the 3 possible sentences are death penalty, life in prison without parole, or life in prison. Okay. And then our next ones are going to start after all this stuff about the death penalty and how that process works. Okay, so then our next one would be second degree murder. And we'll have to look at, okay, what's different here in this one? It's pretty obvious, but I'm not going to hold your hand all the way through this. You're going to go through, define these, look at the penalties so you can see how they compare, and then when you have that list going on Symbaloo, we have 2 tiles up here. I'll just go ahead and pop them both open. The first one is this article, which is from Sunday night, so I'm trying to keep this as up to date as possible. If you haven't read about this case and what's going on in Southern California about this ex-police officer, you might want to read this whole thing, and you can always watch the videos too. But if you have, you can kind of skip through, and what we're interested in is this part down here that's talking about the people that he's actually killed. So there are 3 different people that he has allegedly killed, because none of this has been proved and he hasn't pled guilty yet. But what you need to decide is looking at these 3 homicides that he allegedly committed. So the first 2 were this couple, Monica Kwan, and then her fiance, Keith Lawrence, who he ambushed in a parking lot and shot him repeatedly. Then, a couple days later, he shot at some police officers, didn't kill either one, and then drove off and just pulled up on 2 cops sitting at an intersection and shot at them a bunch of times, killing one of them. So the third person that he allegedly killed is this Michael Crane. So what you need to do is decide, okay, once I have all my types of homicide classified out here, how do these 3 fit my definitions? So I'd go, okay, in the deaths of Monica Kwan and Keith Lawrence, which type of homicide would that be if he committed this crime in Wyoming, and what the punishment would be? And then Michael Crane, who was a different incident a couple days later, this cop he shot at an intersection. If he did that in Wyoming, what type of homicide would that fit? And what is the punishment for that? Now, once you have that done, and that's going to take you a while, this next tile is a timeline that kind of goes through his life, because there's a lot of backstory to this about being in the Navy and being in the LAPD and how he lost his job and all of that. You can just fast forward to the last couple weeks where he shot these people if you want. You can also go read anything else online about this too. It's all over the news. Now, once you think you have that figured out, go ahead and put that in the bottom of your document. Then what you're going to do, your challenge is going to be Monday and Tuesday to come up with an example from the news or make up your own hypothetical one. You don't use real people's names, don't use yourself or anyone else you know, just make up hypotheticals and make up an example or find an example of each of the 6 types of homicide, and then also one of them we'll call the 7th, which is the homicide of a pregnant woman, which isn't technically a crime, it's just like a mandatory sentence enhancement. What you'll do is you'll write those out or find the link. If you're on CNN, they have their justice tab. If you're on Fox News, the easiest way to get there is go to US, and then there's this little micro sub menu, and you can go to crime, and you can use anything you want. So either find in the news or come up with a hypothetical example of all 7 types of homicide. And then what we'll do is you'll find a partner and pair up with them, and you will read them or send them your example depending on how long it is. And then they'll have to look at their classification and decide which one that would be and what the penalty for that would be. So, classifying these will take most of the day Monday. If you finish that, you can start on your example from the news with this Dorner guy and decide in those 3 murders, 3 homicides, what specific type of homicide you should be charged with. And then once you've done that, you should feel pretty comfortable with this. You can go out on the news or come up with your own for the other, all 7 types of homicide. Write out in hypotheticals. And then when you finish that, find somebody else who has, and you can take turns. You give them an example, they find what type, vice versa. So if you guys have any questions, email me, or I might be in the room across the hall. But you should be pretty self-directed and make sure you are very respectful of the sub.